Okay, first I'll start with anal neoplasms first. Check Substan 21st edition, page number 1418.
This actually a lot of difference from last edition. ஏகப்பட்ட ஃபுல்லாவே மாறிடுச்சு.
Don't know, sir. I didn't read 20th edition. Directly reading this only. Okay. Anal intraepithelial neoplasm. First, coming to the neoplasms, AIN, anal intraepithelial neoplasm. It is also called as the Bowen's disease. So basically, Substan has not given the difference, but in theory they have mentioned. So anal tumors are of two types. One is the anal canal tumors, another one is anal margin tumors. So anal canal tumors, if they ask anal canal tumors, only 3 tumors are possible. One is SEC, another one is melanoma, third is adenocarcinoma. Most common is the squamous cell carcinoma. Whereas anal margin carcinoma, many types are there. One of them is this AIN, also called as Bowen's disease. Another one is condyloma acuminata, and the other things are basal cell carcinoma. Remember, in anal canal tumor, basal cell carcinoma won't come. Only in anal marginal tumor, basal cell carcinoma will come. Then squamous cell carcinoma can occur in both anal margin as well as in anal canal. Another one in anal margin notable disease is Paget's disease. It's similar to the Paget's disease in the nipple. So first coming to this, they are telling about this Bowen's disease. It is of 3 types. That is AIN grade 1, 2, 3. One is called as low grade, whereas grade 2 and 3 are often grouped as high grade squamous intraepithelial lesion. One more high grade lesion. Then out of the causes of this AIN, the most causes of the anal dysplasia is caused by HPV, particularly the HPV 16 subtype. Okay, so these lesions are commonly found in this HIV positive multisexual males and in immunocompromised individuals as well as transplant individuals. All these we know. Next, the other strains and all we know it is 16, 18, 31, 33, 45. I come to the next page. So coming to the treatment strategies for this precursor lesions, especially for this condyloma acuminatum and all these things, ablative procedures are available and chemical agents are available. So chemical agents include your podoxyphylline, imiquimod, 5-fluorouracil. One agent they have not mentioned in Substan, I have written here, that is trichloroacetic acid. Among these chemical agents, only this trichloroacetic acid works in both intraanal and perianal lesions, whereas this 5-imiquimod, podoxyphylline and all, it works only in the perianal diseases only, perianal precancerous lesions only. So among the ablative procedure, the most commonly used thing is electrocautery tip ablation. That is not given in Substan. Next, coming to the screening of these patients. So screening of HIV positive and HIV negative multisexual males and bisexual men with pap smear. Pap smear should be done at 2 to 3 year interval. Okay. Next, another one is other groups that can be benefited from this screening are, first they are telling HIV positive, another second one is HIV negative but multisexual males and bisexual male. Other groups who can benefit are HIV positive individuals irrespective of their sexual practices. Even if they don't have sodomy, still they will be benefited by this some screening. And other patients are immunosuppressed organ transplant patients and women with past history of cervical dysplasia or cancer. Notable one is this woman with past history of cervical dysplasia or cancer. That remains as criteria or indication for screening of this anal cancers. Next, coming to the squamous cell carcinoma. Squamous cell carcinoma is the most commonly associated with the HPV infection. So another important true or false meta statement, HIV is an additional independent risk factor for squamous cell carcinoma of the anus. HIV is an independent risk factor for SCC of anus. Then females are more likely to be affected than male. Then the anal cancers are locally aggressive. That is, they have an early invasion into the anal sphincter regions. So once the sphincter is invaded, they go to the other regions such as this ischiorectal fossa, prostatic urethra, bladder, and vagina in women. So it can grow circumferentially and results in the narrowing and stenosis of the anal sphincter. So regarding the spread, both lymphatic and hematogenous spread can occur. Lymphatic occurs in 10 to 15%, whereas hematogenous is less common, less than 10% cases. So where does this inguinal metastasis go? It goes to the perirectal and inguinal nodal basins. So hematogenous, what is the most common site? Liver is the most common site compared to the lung and bone. And it usually occurs in the setting of the tumor arising at the typically from the lesions of the anorectal junction. So other sites are brain, iris have also been reported. So they can manifest in different forms. Squamous cell, they can be confused with all the benign lesions of the anus. So the next page, the mean age of diagnosis will be around 60 years. So patients manifest with all similar hemorrhoid kind of symptoms, perianal mass, pain, anal discharge, bleeding and all. So past history of this condyloma or dysplasia will be present in about 50% of multisexual males and 20% of women and heterosexual men. So past history of precancerous lesion is around 50 times in male. That is most common in the males. Then some patients with anal cancer may present with an isolated inguinal lymphadenopathy. So they can present as a lymph node also. Next, coming to they have given about, just mentioned about the TNM staging. They have not given. Actually, I have written above T1, T2, T3, T4. TIS is high grade squamous intraepithelial lesion. T1 is less than or equal to 2, T2 is 2 to 5, T3 is more than 5, and T4 is involvement of the adjacent organs. This won't be asked, the end status will be asked. So nodal station N1A, N1B, N1C are there. Among this, remember this N1B, that is very important. Metastasis to external iliac nodes is N1B. Other nodes, inguinal, mesorectal, and this intermediate internal iliac nodes are all N1A. So just remember N1B is external iliac nodes and N1C is N1A plus N1B. Along with external iliac, if some other node they have given, then it is N1C. So this N status can be asked. Next, coming to the investigation, MRI is considered as the modality of choice for the assessment of the locoregional disease. Then PET-CT, similar, we can initial staging it can be used, and post-treatment restaging we can use, and it can help in differentiating residual viable cancer from post-treatment fibrosis. That is, I haven't marked that point, you underline it. PET-CT helps in differentiating the residual viable cancer from post-treatment necrosis and fibrosis. Next, coming to the treatment, combined modality treatment with mitomycin C, 5-fluorouracil and radiotherapy. This radiotherapy dosage is important, 45 to 50.4 gray. Okay, this is the usual dosage. So coming to nodal dissection, prophylactic bilateral inguinal radiation for patients with clinically negative nodes and addition of a radiation boost for patients with clinically positive nodes is a common practice. So if no inguinal lymph nodes, just give the CMT, 3 drugs, mitomycin, 5-fluorouracil, 2 drugs and radiotherapy. If nodes are negative, just give a prophylactic radiation to the inguinal region. If the nodes are positive, then additional booster dose should be given. This dosage they haven't given, you have to increase the dosage by 10 gray. Approximately 10 gray have to increase from this 45 to 50.4. So next important MCQ is this, since regression of the anal canal cancers have been found to continue for up to 3 or more months after the completion of CMT, it is recommended that a biopsy should be delayed for at least 3 months after the treatment. So this CMT treatment, it takes some time to work for approximately 3 or more months. That's why we have to do a biopsy only after the after 3 months later. Okay. Next, for surveillance, first surveillance every 3 to 6 months for the first years we'll be doing. So come to the last paragraph. This one is an MCQ. If the pathological evidence of the recurrence is diagnosed, surgical management by an abdominoperineal resection is recommended. So once you've done a CMT treatment, and after in the follow-up you have found recurrence, in those setting, you have to directly go for an abdominal perineal resection. That is the recommended procedure. So salvage APR is required in up to 30% of these cases. So they are given some of the poor outcomes following this salvage surgery. What are the poor outcomes? So the tumor size more than 5 centimeter, adjacent organ involvement, male gender. So remember, anal canal most common in females only, but male gender is coming here. Male gender and associated comorbidities. These things are considered to be a predictors of poor outcome following the salvage surgery. So come to the last line in the left side. Inguinal lymph node dissection can also be offered for primary failure of chemoradiation and for recurrent disease. So nodal dissection can also be done along with this procedure. Come to this side, below this 53.30. Although CMT is the treatment of choice for most patients with SCC of the anal canal, wide local excision. So what are the indications for wide local excision? So well differentiated early T1 tumors. T1 means less than 2 centimeter well differentiated tumors, especially that arise on a hemorrhoidal cushion. So this is an indication for the wide local excision. But the treatment of choice is CMT, combined modality treat therapy. So next, anal margin cancer account for about 20% of anal cancer. That is what I told. Not all anal cancers are this anal canal. This anal margin cancer. So among this anal margin and anal canal is more common. Anal margin presence accounts for about 25%, and SCC is the most common here also. So this behaves like the skin lesion, and it is staged according to the traditional squamous cell carcinoma of the skin only. But here the anal margin cancer have equal incidence in male and female patients. They have equal incidence in both gender. Age group, not much difference. Both have anal canal, anal margin, both are common in the 60-year age group only. Next, so examination findings are all typical of SCC only. So metastatic workup you can do with the CT, chest, abdomen, pelvis. Next, bulky advanced tumors of the anal margin extending into the anus are treated similar to the tumors of the anal canal with CMT. So this is another important statement. So anal margin cancer, if it is bulky and if it has extended into the anal canal, then consider it as an anal canal lesion and treat it accordingly. So in contrast, tumors that are limited to the anal margin are treated like cutaneous SCC elsewhere on the body. So anal margin, usually they are treated as a SCC of the skin by local excision only. But if it is too large and extending into the anal canal, then you go for a CMT treatment. That is treated like a anal canal lesion. So next, coming to the perineal Paget's disease. So perineal Paget's disease is thought to correspond to one. Yes.
Hello.
Yes,
I wanted to mention 2 points here. The MRI finding, I think it is important actually. MRI finding of SCC. Due to T2 it shows low to intermediate signal intensity compared to the muscle. Okay. And T1 it is in T2 it is high intensity related to skeletal muscle, and T1 it is low to intermediate intensity compared to skeletal muscle. This can be reversed and asked as a MCQ question.
Okay.
But MRI finding.
MRI finding. High signal intensity. Okay. Next.
Compared to skeletal muscle, in T2 it is high intensity. In T1 it is low intensity.
Next, another point.
Another point is that's what after CMT, the 5-year survival rate is 75%. Okay. And one more interesting point is after in salvage APR also 5-year survival is 75% only.
Okay.
After salvage APR also 75% only 5-year survival, and CMT also 5-year survival is 75% only.
Okay.
That's all. There nothing else.
Okay. Okay, man.
One more point. This lymph node involvement is a adverse prognostic factor.
Okay. And this poor outcome after salvage surgery. What is the poor outcome means? Usually they are given, you see, because after APR resection setting is associated with substantial morbidity and complication, including perineal wound, pelvic abscess, perineal wound, urinary retention, erectile dysfunction. Not about the tumor recurrence and all they are telling. We should concentrate this on the wound, mainly on the wound actually.
Okay.
That's what one more.
Okay.
Okay,
Morbidity is high.
perineal pages.
Morbidity is high in IAPR.
Sir, usually morbidity is just related to perineal wound, pelvic abscess, perineal wound hernia, delayed perineal wound healing, urinary retention, and erectile dysfunction.
Okay.
And this also CT scan it show hypoattenuated necrotic.
Yeah.
You mean the only CT scan
Not
also
able
it
to
shows
see.
hypoattenuated.
CT scan hypoattenuated lesion.
CT scan hypoattenuated.
Okay. These are all given in the second paragraph. Okay. Next to the TNM staging, MRI is considered the modality of choice. T2 tumor appear to be high intensity related to skeletal muscle on T2 and low to moderate intensity on T1. Then CT scan finding is also given there. CT is primarily anal cancer appear as a hypoattenuated necrotic mass. Okay. Perianal Paget's disease. Perianal Paget's disease is thought to correspond to an intraepithelial adenocarcinoma. This is important. Intraepithelial adenocarcinoma. It arises from the dermal apocrine sweat glands. Okay. Then non-specific symptoms will be that perianal Paget's disease may present primary or secondary disease. So primary means intraepidermal or intradermal disease. Secondary disease is associated with the anorectal adenocarcinoma. So approximately 50% of the patients with the anal margin Paget's disease harbor a synchronous colorectal neoplasm, mandating full colonoscopy for complete evaluation. So if patient is having anal margin Paget's disease, they will have approximately 50% synchronous anorectal colorectal neoplasm. So we have to do, even in anal Paget's disease, it is mandatory to go for a colonoscopical evaluation. Next page. So these patients can also develop synchronous or metachronous malignancies of the other viscera, adnexa and viscera. So treatment for this condition is wide local excision is recommended for most patients. Then you can close it with a flap. So in the setting of a locally invasive lesion or a synchronous anorectal adenocarcinoma, APR with neoadjuvant chemoradiotherapy is usually indicated. Okay, this is important. So locally invasive lesion or synchronous anorectal adenocarcinoma is there. Then you go for NACT followed by APR. So for recurrence rate can be as high as 30 to 60% in 5 years. So that it is associated with the high recurrence rate. The frequent association with synchronous and metachronous malignancy and high recurrence rate highlight the importance of long-term follow-up. Okay, so it has the ability for high recurrence as well as a synchronous and metachronous. So long-term follow-up is needed. Next, coming to the basal cell carcinoma. Basal cell carcinoma of the perianal region is a rare, only 0.2%. Men are commonly affected. About 30% of the patients have past history of BCC at other sites. Age is similar age, 65 to 75 only. So this is important. 30% people will have other side BCC also. So generally the lesions are of small size, 1 to 2 centimeter. They arise from the stratum basal layer of the epidermis and pilosebaceous follicular units. So what are the risk factors? I haven't underlined that last line in the first paragraph. Radiation, immunodeficiency, trauma, burns, chronic irritation, infection, these all plays an important role. So once this perianal BCC is diagnosed, other cutaneous surfaces needs to be thoroughly evaluated. I told 30% is associated with the other side BCC. So you have to evaluate him completely. Then on local examination, we know the findings. Perianal BCC have not been shown to have any association with the HPV infection. So here no HPV relation with BCC. Then tumors management depend on the lesion and the extent of the invasion into the surrounding structure. Tumor less than 2 centimeter are excised with at least 1 centimeter margin. Larger lesions without extension into the anal canal are excised primarily, but typically require coverage with a graft. So less than 2 centimeter, give 1 centimeter clearance and resect. Larger lesions without extension into the anal canal, you simply excise it and cover it with a graft. So most micrographic surgery is also a viable option. Then large lesions which it is extending into the anal canal, for that we have to go for radiation therapy and or APR, any one option. Okay, you have to go for a radiation and or APR. So 5-year survival rates up to 100% have been reported. We know BCC is not that aggressive malignancy. So 5-year survival rate is 100%. So we can recur in 29%. Next, coming to the malignant melanoma. Malignant melanoma 2 to 4%. Okay, the anus is the third most common site for malignant melanoma. First is skin, second eye, third is anus, representing 0.2 to 0.3% of all melanoma. Then symptoms are non-specific. When it is pigmented, it is confused with the thrombosed hemorrhoid. So amelanotic lesions can occur in 30% cases. So has a very poor prognosis. Irrespective of the efforts, we can go with radical resection, including APR. Nothing has shown that much benefit. Wide local excision is usually recommended when feasible. Patients with larger lesions or extensive sphincter involvement, they require aggressive surgery. So the response, the chemo, it is not chemosensitive or radiosensitive. That's it. Then adenocarcinoma of the anal canal, it accounts for the 3 to 9% of all anal canal neoplasm. So true anal canal adenocarcinoma has to be differentiated from the lower rectal adenocarcinoma. So what are the distinguishing features of these two? That is true rectal, lower rectal adenocarcinoma and true anal adenocarcinoma. These are the prominent ductal structures, abundant of mucin with organized mucinous pools and infiltration into the perirectal soft tissue. Okay, so these are the features of the true anal canal adenocarcinoma. That is prominent ductal structures, abundance of mucin and perirectal soft tissue involvement. So anal canal adenocarcinoma usually originates from the anal glands but may develop in the long-standing fistula in ano. So long-standing fistula in ano, it causes adenocarcinoma. Next, similar to colorectal adenocarcinoma, this also has a similar to colorectal adenocarcinoma, this also has a multi-step sequence. So because of the submucosal location of the anal glands, anal adenomas are not apparent until, so in the initial stages, they are not found because they are located in the submucosal glands. So that's it. Then this side, next page. Staging workup includes the MRI and CT scanning. Then adenocarcinoma arising in the fistula in ano has to be reported to have the 3 characteristic MRI findings. That is markedly hyperintense fluid on T2 weighted images, enhancing solid components, and a fistula between the mass and the anus. These are 3 are the features of a adenocarcinoma arising in fistula in ano. So treatment is typically neoadjuvant chemoradiation followed by APR for tumors larger than 2 centimeter. So less than 2 centimeter and small well-differentiated lesions, they can be wide locally excised. That's it. Anal lesion. Anything to add?
Just summarize the treatment of all cancers.
Summarize the treatment of all cancer. Yes, I'll do it. So coming to the anal intraepithelial neoplasia, these are all just this Bowen's disease mainly they are telling. So treatment of this Bowen's disease precancerous lesions will be either chemical or your ablative procedure, like ablative procedure like a cautery, electrocautery tip and all. So that's it for that. For squamous cell carcinoma of the anal canal, first line treatment preferred is you have to see the size of the lesion. And if it is and it's the grade, whether it is well differentiated, whether it is histology, whether it is well differentiated or not. If it is very small, that is T1 lesion, less than 2 centimeter, no nodes are there, then well differentiated, you can go for wide local excision. Apart from this, all other cases will require only a CMT, combined modality treatment with mitomycin C, 5-fluorouracil and radiotherapy 45 to 50.4 gray. With respect to the inguinal nodes, if it is not positive, then you can go for a prophylactic, just a prophylactic radiation alone. If it is positive, then you should give an additional booster dosage also. Okay, and you do a biopsy after 3 months to prove that the tumor is cured. So during follow-up, if you have found a recurrence after this CMT, this will be an indication for your APR. Okay, and during this stage, using this APR, if lymph nodes are also involved, you can go for a inguinal lymph node dissection as well. Okay, that's it. Coming to the treatment of the anal squamous cell carcinoma. Next, perianal Paget's disease. Perianal Paget's disease, wide local excision. Remember, it is also like precancerous lesion only. So there may be underlying malignancy, but still wide local excision is recommended for the most patients. But remember, it has a 50% chance of intra anal canal synchronous anorectal malignancy. So you have to go for you have to do wide local excision only after thoroughly evaluating with a colonoscope. While coming to the basal cell carcinoma, like elsewhere, there are multiple treatment options by wide local excision, and that is also depends on the size only. For BCC, if it is less than 2 centimeter, then we can give a 1 centimeter margin and you do a wide local excision. So larger lesions, you see, larger lesions, two varieties are there. One extends into the anal canal, one not extending into the anal canal. Which is extending into the anal canal, you should treat it with radiation and APR. If it is not extending into the anal canal, that can be resected only primarily. Okay, and close it with a graft, similar to wide local excision only. So we have to see the scenario of the question in BCC. If it is large, but whether it is extending into the anal canal or not. Not extending means simple wide local excision with the grafting or flap will suffice. We're coming to malignant melanoma, resection, wide local excision or APR, depending upon the extent. Here, no role of chemoradiation. Well, coming to adenocarcinoma. Adenocarcinoma of this anal canal, we have to treat it with this is the only lesion they are telling, like colorectal only, go for a neoadjuvant chemoradiation followed by APR if it is larger than 2 centimeter. If it is smaller than 2 centimeter and well differentiated, so same wide local excision can be done. Okay, any more points to be added, or else I'll shift to biliary malignancy.
Okay, Yogesh.
Yes.
Can you tell about this Nigro regimen?
Nigro regimen you want? Okay, wait 1 minute. Nigro protocol is infusional 5-fluorouracil from day 1 to 4. Patient is coming today. Today is the day 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 days you give 5-fluorouracil infusion. Okay, and you repeat it on the 28th day. Okay, that is one thing. Second thing is mitomycin C. Giving mitomycin C on the day 1 alone. So day 1 and 4 5-fluorouracil infusion followed, repeat it on day 28. And one more thing is mitomycin C on day 1 alone. This is Nigro protocol.
Okay.
So what is the few important points which are not in Sebastian? 10 points I'll tell. If you can remember, or else put it on mute. Okay. Paget's disease, which is the most common presentation. In Paget's, I told it behaves like a benign only. Pruritus is the most common presentation of a Paget's disease. Okay, that is one important MCQ. Then the radiation dose I already told 45 gray. So what are the regions to be included while giving radiation? Yes. Melanoma bleeding.
Melanoma most common presentation bleeding. Paget's disease pruritus.
Okay, Paget's disease pruritus. Melanoma it is. Okay, melanoma it will be bleeding. So in anal canal radiotherapy, which radiotherapy is preferred? Intensity modulated radiotherapy or 3D conformal radiotherapy?
reconfirm already.
No, intensity modulator IMRT is preferred. Okay. So the additional dose I told no indications for additional radiotherapy that they will ask. That is T3, T4 lesions, any lesions with node positivity. In Subsistence, they have given only node positive lesion, but other indications are also there. Node positive, T3, T4 also is an indication, and T2 lesions and residual disease after. If there is a residual after this usual 45 gray, that will also be an indication for additional radiotherapy. Additional radiotherapy will be 9 to 14 gray we will add. Okay, from this 45. So indications of APR generally I already told it will take some time. So persistence of the lesions after 6 months. The third month they are taking biopsy. Persistence of the lesions after 6 months will also be an indication for the APR. Not only recurrence, simply the lesion itself persisting. It was also told by Rajamendran only. Next. The methods and all no need, that is not in depth.
And one more thing.
Yeah. Yes.
What are the immunohistochemistry? Okay. Used to differentiate.
Yeah.
What is IHC markers? Used to differentiate rectal adenocarcinoma and anal adenocarcinoma.
Rectal and anal. CEA.
What are the IHC markers? Immunohistochemical markers. Okay, I will tell. So cytokeratin 7 and 19. Cytokeratin 19 will be present in the anal canal cancer.
7 and 19.
After 19. So only 9 cytokeratin 19. Only 19 is present in colonic adenocarcinoma. Okay.
Colon only 19. One more what you tell?
Cytokeratin 7 and 19 for anal canal.
Okay.
Okay.
Source?
Among that 19, cytokeratin 19 in the colon adenocarcinoma, that will be very focal positive. Okay. The 19 in the colon it is focal positive, and in anal canal 19 is diffuse positive.
No, didn't get you.
No. Cytokeratin 19 I told na in colonic adenocarcinoma.
Yes.
That will be focal positive. Only focal positive in colonic adenocarcinoma. That's immunohistochemical markers.
Focal positive.
Focal positive.
Okay.
But in anal canal it will be in diffuse positive. Diffuse.
Okay. What does that mean? Focal positive, diffuse positive?
That staining based upon the stain. The staining will be
stain. Okay. Depending on the stain.
It is completely. It is only focal areas.
Okay.
This has been told in the Rajamendran, I think, revision class, I guess, because he some journal or something he told like that.
And
it's PET-CT needed in all cases of anal canal SCC. For suspecting anal canal SCC, PET-CT needed in all cases or not?
All cases. All cases, no need adjust.
Even a statement in submission. PET-CT is needed essentially in all cases for initial staging and post-treatment restaging.
Which paper? Which page?
The page only. That is before PET-CT.
All they have not given, play an important role.
All cases they haven't given.
Important role. He told that play an important role in initial staging and also post-treatment restaging.
I have zoomed it where they have different. PET-CT has been found to play an important role in the initial staging and post-treatment restaging, helps in differentiating residual viable anal cancer from post-treatment necrosis and fibrosis. All cases they haven't given. In class also, sir didn't tell.
In class only. Important. Only in 2 cancers, PET-CT is essential in GI cancer. So one is esophagus and another one is.
Yeah. He has given some article reference. PET-CT should be considered for treatment planning. All patients should receive a minimum. Okay.
So that you have to remember. And one more thing. After
any one person speak.
Okay. Hemant, it is.
That's what in esophagus, as we read, PET CT it should be done first before doing endoscopic ultrasound. Nah? That is what we read now.
Yeah.
Metastasis we have to rule out, then only we have to do endoscopic ultrasound. Yeah, that's what.
Then what are the flap you should use it for perineal wounds, to cover the perineal wounds after APR? That they can
Gracilis flap. Gracilis flap you can use.
Gracilis and a pedicled omental flap. Okay,
Pedicled
omental. Gluteus maximus flap and a vertical rectus abdominis flap.
Okay.
Which is good one?
Which is good?
I think one MCQ has come here. Which is good one?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Where it is even, I don't know. Okay.
That's it only. Any more?
That's it. That methods of radiation and all, it is there. APPA method is there.
So in Nigro protocol, what radiotherapy methods they are using?
IMRT.
Okay, in notes it's given as external beam radiation. It's a type of IMRT.
Yeah. External beam radiation only it's given.
And where are the areas you will give radiotherapy? What are the areas you will give
That
radiotherapy?
was I was about to tell that thing. Inguinal nodes, it should involve the pelvis, it should involve the anus and the perineum. These are the field of radiation. And recurrence is up to 30%, 15 to 30%. So inguinal nodes, pelvis, anus, perineum are the regions to be included.
Okay. So that's it.
In this,
and
what we are told is regarding the radiotherapy, initially minimum 45 gray radiotherapy should be given. Okay. Then superficial field border he has given, that is 30.6 gray. In node negative, it is 36 gray. Do you know what is that superficial field border?
No.
No need. No. Okay.
And you have to remember about this AN Bowen's disease. What are the HPV numbers it's causing Bowen's disease? Okay.
16, 18, 31, 33, 45. These are all high grade HPV. Any HPV causing malignancy, same thing will come. No need to mug up. 6 and 11 only for purely benign lesions.
Okay. And regarding oropharyngeal carcinoma, which is more this one?
Same 16, 18.
18. Okay.
16, 18 only. Here they are specifically mentioned 16 as most common. That's why I told it. In there, 16, 18 is most common.
Okay, man, go to biliary cancer.
Okay. So come to Sebastian 21st edition. Page number 1516.
You have to go to duty.
No issues, I'll complete my. So gallbladder cancer incidence of gallbladder cancer, it occurs in the 6th and the 7th decade of the life, and it is 2 to 3 times more common in the women than in the men. Then ethnicity plays an important role. That is, it is higher incidence in women of the India and Pakistan. Then that's it. In US, gallbladder GB is the most common cancer of the biliary tract, and 5th most common GI cancer. So coming to the causes of the gallstones, causes of this GB, presence of gallstones is considered to be the primary risk factors, and a larger stone that is more than 3 centimeter carry an increased risk of cancer development. More than 80% of the patients with GB cancer have cholelithiasis, and gallbladder cancer is approximately 7 times more common in patients with gallstones than without stones. Okay, so patients with stones 7 times more common. In patients with GB cancer, 80% will have cholelithiasis. Then stone size is more than 3 centimeter. So cholelithiasis is the primary risk factor. The type of stone does not correlate with the incidence of the gallbladder cancer. Other risk factors might include the APBJ, choledochal cyst, and PSC. So this porcelain gallbladder is also a risk factor. Then that is because of this long-term inflammation and all. We know that. Next. So, whereas the risk of gallbladder is higher in patients with gallbladder wall calcification, malignant disease in this setting is unusual, occurring in less than 10% of the patients with porcelain gallbladder. So, although it is a risk factor, it has a very less incidence. That is, less than 10% of porcelain gallbladder patients will only develop this gallbladder cancer. Next, coming to the adenoma carcinoma, there is no evidence that the patients with gallbladder polyposis carry an increased risk of gallbladder malignancy. Important statement. No evidence that patients with gallbladder polyposis carry an increased risk of gallbladder malignancy. Then single gallbladder polyp, but that is polyposis means multiple polyps they are telling. But a single gallbladder polyp larger than 10 millimeter carries an increased malignancy risk. So what are the risk factors in general for a polyp means the number of the polyp if it is less than 3, and if there is a mucosa invasion, and if the size is more than 1 centimeter. These 3 things in general, these are the risk factors for this polyp for running into GB cancer. Then other risk factors which this Sebastian has not given, these things are your ethanol, tobacco, history of biliary disease, age, then female sex, high carbohydrate. Remember this fat, they have never mentioned something as a risk factor as fat. Fat doesn't come. So coming to the tumor markers, 2 tumor markers are there, CEA, CA 19.9. So the significant level is CEA more than 4. It will be 93% specific and 50% sensitive. And CA 19.9 more than 20, that is 80% sensitive and specific. So CA 19.9 is more sensitive and specific, significant value is more than 20. So coming to the pathology and the staging, pathology and staging, so I'm sorry, I think I have left one page to take photograph. This side, no, it's there, it's there. A gross description of the gallbladder. What are the gross types of gallbladder cancer? There are 4 types. They are infiltrative, nodular, papillary, and combined types. So most tumors, most common type is your infiltrative pattern. So this infiltrative pattern means it spreads in the subserosal plane. Okay, infiltrative most common, spreads in the subserosal plane and can invade the gallbladder wall and even into the porta hepatis. So if they ask which type invades into the porta hepatis, which goes through subserosal route, that is infiltrative type. So second one is nodular type. Nodular type tend to grow as a more circumscribed mass, and it can invade the liver. Okay, so a small number of gallbladder cancer are of papillary types and carry a better prognosis. So which is among 3, which is better is papillary cancer as per the good prognosis. Then the first draining nodal basin for gallbladder cancer includes the cystic and peridocal nodes. From these, it goes to the retroperitoneal and pancreatico-duodenal nodes. Actually, the route I have written above. So what happens is, first is retroportal nodes will be there. Retroportal nodes will, here they have mentioned about this retroportal, that retroportal will go to the right celiac nodes. Then posterior-superior pancreatico-duodenal nodes will be there. That will go to the SMA. So finally, from the right celiac node and from the SMA, it goes into the interiotocaval nodes. This is the route of spread. First draining basin is cystic and pericholedochal. After that, it involves the retroportal and posterior-superior pancreatico-duodenal. So among this, the retroportal will go to the celiac nodes. the postero-superior pancreatico-duodenal will go to the SMA nodes. So from the nodes in near the SMA and the right celiac, it goes to the inter-aortocaval nodes. This is the nodal drainage of this gallbladder cancer. Then come to the last line. Transperitoneal spread is also common and can progress to the carcinomatosis. Okay, this is another route they are telling. Then so direct invasion into liver is also possible because the venous drainage of the gallbladder is to the direct tributaries into the liver parenchyma. This one all we know only, that's why I didn't tell. Then clinical presentation. So because 90% of the gallbladder cancer originate in the fundus and body. Some data in Congo class they told 60%. So you see, subsistent data is 90% originates in the fundus and the gallbladder. Okay, and most do not. Yes.
Only fundus. So only
60% is only fundus. Okay. So 60% is only fundus. Fundus or gallbladder over fundus or body, it together constitute about 90%. Most do not produce a symptom until advanced. We know that most gallbladder cancers have systemic disease at the time of presentation, with nodal disease in 35% and distant metastasis in 40%. Note here, distant presentation as distal metastasis is more common as 40%, whereas presenting with along with the nodal diseases 35%. So symptoms of acute cholecystitis may have a better prognosis because these patients would have presented early. That is the significance. Why acute cholecystitis in these patients is better prognosis? They would have come to us early. We would have found the carcinoma early. Okay. Regarding the pain, some patients describe pain of symptoms of chronic cholecystitis in which the pain has recently changed in quality or frequency. So recent change in quality or frequency of the chronic chole pain. That is the clinical feature for this GB cancer. Then come to the diagnosis. Diagnosis, we know initial thing is ultrasound. I told about CEA, CA 99. So CECT or MRI is the important thing. CECT will be the investigation of choice. So coming to the staging of the gallbladder cancer, staging T0 is no evidence of primary, TA is in situ, and T1, T1 tumor invades the lamina propria or the muscularis layer. Okay, so T1B they can ask, that is it invades the muscular layer. T1A is lamina propria, T1B is muscular layer. Then T2, T2 invades the perimuscular connective tissue on the peritoneal side without involvement of the serosa. So that is T2A. T2A is perimuscular connective tissue on the peritoneal side without involvement of the serosa. T2B they can ask. So remember, T1B is muscular layer, T2B is invades the perimuscular connective tissue on the hepatic side with no extension into the liver. That is T2B. Perimuscular connective tissue on the hepatic side with no extension into the liver. That is T2B. So T3 we know it perforates the serosa and it directly invades the liver or one adjacent organ or structure. T4 is it invades the main portal artery, portal vein or hepatic artery or two or more extrahepatic organ or structures. Nodal, it is easy, N1, N2. N1 is 1 to 3 regional lymph nodes. N2 is more than 4 or more. That's it. Coming to the staging. Coming to the next page, nothing, I didn't find any MCQ. Directly come to the gallbladder polyp. So the most consistent predictors of the malignancy in gallbladder polyp are single polyp, size greater than 1 centimeter, and the age older than 50 years. These three are the important things. Okay. Another one is mucosa invasion that they have not given here. So these three are the important consistent features. Then gallbladder cancer after cholecystectomy. So for T1A.
Okay.
Yeah, tell.
One more point is that one at 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter polyp cholecystectomy should be done. And last line important actually, smaller than 1 centimeter should go surveillance to demonstrate the stability. With the exception that in PSC, the threshold should be very low for cholecystectomy.
That is
Everywhere
point.
less than 1. 1 centimeter means you should just go for surveillance. But if the patient is having a PSC, then your threshold for cholecystectomy should be very low. Matlab, you should consider cholecystectomy very early like that.
No, no.
Yeah, because it is a pre-malignant lesion. PSC is itself a risk factor for GB cancer.
Except PSC, that you are not exception is a question. That's right.
If it is associated with PSC, you have to take the cutoff as 0.6 centimeter, given in Bloom cut.
Okay,
0.6 centimeter.
0.6 centimeter. Yeah, okay. Okay. Matlab less than 0.6 centimeter in PSC, you have to go surveillance.
Yeah. With 0.6
More than
centimeter,
0.6 means you have to do surgery.
Yes.
Okay.
Then gallbladder cancer after cholecystectomy for
Actually,
T1A.
for MCQ purpose, any polyp with PSC, go for a cholecystectomy.
Yeah, that's what I also think.
But they given the 0.8 centimeter polyp, and all high risk for in PSC. But why you want to worry? And they tell any polyp with the PSC. Go for.
Okay, gallbladder cancer after cholecystectomy, T1A cholecystectomy is usually suffice. Then the likelihood of nodal disease in this case is less than 3%. This they might ask. In T1A lesions, what is the chance of nodal spread? So chance is just less than 3%, not 0. Then with the T1B lesions and perineural, so T1B lesion for cholecystectomy is usually suffice. But there are some conditions with T1B lesions and perineural lymphatic or vascular invasion, the likelihood of nodal disease increases significantly. Therefore, extended cholecystectomy is recommended for all these patients who are all medically fit. For all patients who are medically fit with T1B or greater level of lesion. So T1B, if they ask, better to write the answer as extended cholecystectomy. That is what they have given. Is generally recommended for all patients who are medically fit with T1B or greater level of invasion. Then next paragraph, I didn't find any MCQ. Anyone know any MCQ? Or else I'll go next paragraph. Patient suspected of having the gallbladder cancer preoperatively. So preoperatively, patients whom the preoperative evaluation suggests possibly resectable GB cancer without metastatic disease should be offered a resection, even though survival is poor compared with those found incidentally. Okay, then radical resection in the setting of T3 and T4 lesion include at least segment 4B and 5, but more often requires a central hepatectomy. Okay, including all of segment 4, 5, and 8. All three should be removed. That is central hepatectomy. To achieve R0 margin status in a large tumor, a right trisectionectomy may be required. So direct extension of the tumor into the adjacent structures, such as this is important point. Direct extension of the tumor into adjacent structures, such as the hepatic flexure, is not a contraindication to resection, as long as negative margins can be obtained and all the diseases resected. So even if it goes for hepatic flexure, go for resection. Then next, patients with advanced disease at presentation. Patients with advanced disease is generally, so what they are telling, nothing, palliation only in these cases. Generally managed by an endostomy for duodenal obstruction. You have to manage with a duodenal wall stent. Then adjuvant treatment. The majority of the GB cancer recurrence include the distant sites as the part of the recurrence pattern. Okay, so most common site of recurrence will be distant recurrence only. Okay, highlighting the importance of systemic therapy. So gemcitabine based treatment combining with the platinum are typically used. We know all these things. Patients with high risk lesion, that is T4, perinodal, R1, should be considered for adjuvant therapy with an oncologist. Then survival T status, N status, histological differentiation, CBD involvement, and R0. These are the independent factors affecting survival. Important MCQ. What are the independent factors affecting the survival is T, N, and your histological differentiation, CBD involvement, and R0 status. Then MCQ 5-year survival, you read this for T2 patients, it is up to 20% to more than 40, 50, 60%. For T3, it is 20%. For T4, it is only in months. So patients with metastatic disease only they'll ask. Metastatic disease at presentation have a median survival of only 13 months. Okay, so overall survival, if they ask, the overall survival of the gallbladder is less than 15%. So if you have done a curative resection, they will ask what is the median survival. Curative resection, if you have done, then it is 26 months. Metastatic 13 months. Curative resection, if you have done, it is 26 months. Overall survival is only 15%. So that's it, GB cancer. Next, bile duct cancer. Bile duct. So there are various sites, that is I have written there. Hilum, distal incidents, 40 to 60% it occurs in the hilum only. Second most common area is the distal, 20 to 30%. Then third important area is the intrahepatic, 10%. Then in 10% it will be multifocal. So coming to the risk factors. Risk factors, we know all these things, risk factors and all: chronic inflammation in the biliary tree, that is choledochal cyst and all. The incidence of the cholangio, last three lines you see, the incidence of cholangiocarcinoma is estimated between 10 to 20% if the cyst is not resected by the age 20 years old. This is for choledochal cyst they are telling. Okay, you should resect it. If you don't resect by 20 years, the risk is 10 to 20%. Next page, cholangiocarcinoma is prevalent in southeast. These are the infective risk factors, that is Clonarchus sinensis, Opiscotrachus viverni and all. Then recurrent pyogenic cholangitis is another risk factor. Okay, so recurrent pyogenic cholangitis is characterized by the primary bile duct stone formation and with the infection and carries risk of the cholangiocarcinoma. Then PSC with its autoimmune multifocal strictures in the intrahepatic and extrahepatic, that is also a risk factor. So PSC is the most common risk factor for cholangiocarcinoma in the West. So cumulative annual risk for cholangiocarcinoma in PSC is 1.5% per year, and the risk is increased in those with the associated IBD. So PSC plus IBD increased risk for cholangiocarcinoma. So patients with PSC may have multifocal disease not amenable to resection. So sporadic cases, most common, it occurs in the bifurcation, whereas patients with PSC may have multifocal diseases that may be multifocal, means that is not amenable to resection. Other risk factors include the thoratrast exposure, oral contraceptives, asbestos, cigarette smoking. So finally, cirrhosis is also a risk factor. Okay. Then one more risk factor they have not given here that I have written above, that is operative transduodenal sphincteroplasty. It's important. Transduodenal sphincteroplasty, operative transduodenal sphincteroplasty is a risk factor. Then coming to the staging and the classification. So staging, what are the types? There we saw three things: infiltrative, nodular, papillary in GB. Here infiltrative is not there, sclerosing is there. Sclerosing, nodular and papillary. So sclerosing cholangiocarcinoma tend to occur in the proximal bile duct, okay, causing periductal fibrosis. So the papillary and nodular subtypes tend to occur in the distal. Okay, this is the MCQ. Proximal, which is there, sclerosing. So in distal, which is there, papillary and nodular. Okay, so in nodular type, firm mass similar to that. Whereas the more common papillary type, so the most common type is the papillary compared to these two in the distal, whereas the more common papillary subtype appears as polypoid lesion that is soft with less periductal fibrosis and better. So we both GB and cholangio, papillary is a good prognosis. So classification, TNM classification is there. I will come to that. Next, the two pathological factors most influencing the prognosis after the resection are R0 status and the absence of the lymph node metastasis. These two are the most important things. Then coming to the clinical features, the cholangiocarcinoma, the last three line only I found as MCQ, tends to extend in a submucosal route. Okay, they spread through the submucosal route with associated perineural invasion, but constant pain on presentation suggests more advanced disease. Okay, so these things and all we know. Okay, unilobar obstruction means what happened? Unilobar atrophy, contralateral hypertrophy and all will happen. Okay, so at or below hepatic bifurcation, if it is there, then it will manifest as early than the intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma. There are known points only. Then diagnosis and assessment of the resectability. So diagnosis and acceptability come to this point. So the location of the tumor can be identified and its relation to the vascular structures can also be assessed by the CECT. So CECT is the primary thing. So the relation to the vascular structures are better assessed in the CECT, and aberrant anatomy and determination of the segmental or lobal involvement are all possible by the CT. So, but next para they are telling, typically CT alone is insufficient for assessment of the feasibility and appropriateness of the resection. So cholangiography by either MRCP, PTC or ERCP helps determine the proximal extent of the resection. Okay, so ERCP carries the additional risk of cholangitis. This we already saw this point and all. So bilobar intrahepatic metastasis and any extrahepatic disease are contraindication to resection, as is the involvement of biliary secondary radicals. So they are giving the some of the contraindications to resection. That is bilobar intrahepatic metastasis and any extrahepatic metastasis. Then involvement of secondary biliary radicals. Okay, so and another indication, another contraindication is encasement of the main portal vein, then bilateral hepatic lobar artery involvement, then lobar atrophy with involvement of the contralateral portal vein or biliary radicals. So these are the risk factors. So other risk factors they haven't given is this portal hypertension, cirrhosis, along with the N2 disease. These are all another contraindication, relative contraindication. Okay, so next tissue diagnosis, next paragraph, tissue diagnosis before resection in operative patients is unnecessary. So with obstructive jaundice, bile cytology and brushings are unreliable, and thus a negative cytology report does not exclude the malignant disease. Some centers they do this bile cytology and brush biopsy and all, but this even negative result does not exclude a malignancy. So next they are telling about the preoperative biliary drainage. Here they have given the cutoff level as 10 milligram per deciliter. Okay, and those with prolonged time interval between presentation and resection, for that patients also you can do preoperative biliary stenting. That if there is a long time between the presentation and the resection time. So for patients with the hilar cholangiocarcinoma, hepatic resection it remains an important feature of the operative strategy. In the setting of a complete biliary obstruction, hepatic resection carries an additional risk of bleeding, sepsis, and hepatic failure. Drainage of the obstructed but unaffected segment can enhance the post-resection hypertrophy of the remaining liver, but may increase the perioperative infective complication. That's what this I have written.
This line you can explain or what? I didn't get what is this line actually? The drainage of obstructed but unaffected segment.
Actually, if the tumor is not it's not invaded actually, but it is obstructing any one segment of the liver. In that setting, you can go for maybe some external compression of the nodes or any reason. If there is obstruction, you can go for the biliary drainage because to increase the hypertrophy, to cause hypertrophy of the remaining liver.
Okay. Continue.
But it can increase, but they are also telling it increases the infective complication. So just remember the indication alone. Indication is just prolonged duration between the presentation and the resection. Then the level here they are given 10. In onco class they told us 15 milligram per deciliter. These two are the indications for preoperative biliary drainage. Okay. So some things I have written below.
Anything hilar mass you can do PTC. And anything lower obstruction we go for a endoscopic drainage. So what is the complication? It means the endoscopic drainage patient will it is necessary, but endoscopic drainage patient will develop more number of cholangitis than this one. That only they are telling that post-operatively whatever maybe the drainage was good, but cholangitis was more when compared to the other patients.
Okay. So some things I have written below the extra points. So between preoperative drainage and surgery, there should be some 6 to 8 weeks of waiting time. Okay. So preoperative biliary drainage is commonly used in patients with hilar cholangiocarcinoma planned for major hepatectomy. That is the known point only. Next, coming to the TNM staging. TNM staging, T1 is T1 we have T1A, T1B, that is solitary tumor less than or equal to 5 centimeter without vascular invasion. Then T1B is more than 5 centimeter without vascular invasion. Then T2 is T2 they might ask with intrahepatic vascular invasion of the multiple tumors with or without vascular invasion. Intrahepatic vascular invasion should be there or multiple tumor should be there. Okay, these two are the things for T2. Then T3 is perforating the visceral peritoneum. Then T4 is local extrahepatic structures by direct invasion. So remember T2 alone, if you want to remember one thing, intrahepatic vascular invasion, a solitary tumor with intrahepatic vascular invasion or multiple tumors with or without vascular invasion. These two comes under T2. Then nodal N1, and there is no N2. Okay, in cholangiocarcinoma, N1 is any regional lymph node metastasis. That's it. Then come to the paragraph below. Coming to the operative management, they're telling between 7 to 15% of patients undergoing resection for suspected biliary malignant disease will prove to have the benign diseases. So without biopsy, if we proceed and do surgery, some 15 up to 15% will have benign diseases. Okay. Alternatively, more than 50% of the patients undergoing explorations have had historically had operative findings that has precluded resection, such as peritoneal metastasis, hepatic metastasis, or local. That is, more than 50% they become inoperable. Okay, that is what they are telling. With the experience judging, then staging laparoscopy is important at this. So it's important. We have to do that and proceed with it. Then coming to the distal cholangiocarcinoma, nothing is there. I have written on extra point endoscopic ultrasound. Endoscopic ultrasound is useful for evaluation of suspicious carcinoma of the distal CBD alone. Okay. Then proximal cholangiocarcinoma, nothing in this page. So there are separate staging system. Whatever I told is first is for intrahepatic bile duct cancer. Okay. Now we coming for the perihilar bile duct cancer. Another one is distal bile duct cancer. Three different staging is there. So in perihilar bile duct cancer, T1 is confined to the bile duct with the extension up to muscular layer. T2 is T2A-B is there. A is beyond the wall of the bile duct to surrounding adipose tissue. Then T2B is invades the adjacent hepatic parenchyma. So here T2B is important. Remember, T2B is involvement of the adjacent hepatic parenchyma. This is for perihilar bile duct, I am telling. Then T3 is a tumor invades the unilateral branches of the portal vein or hepatic artery. According to AJCC, few more things are also there. Invading the perimuscular connective tissue and hepatic side without extension into the liver. That is comes under T3. Okay. Then T4 is main portal vein or its branch bilateral.
One second, you tell that 53.
No, T2B is already entered hepatic parenchyma.
That is why it is MCQ, man.
T3, what you do?
Invades perimuscular connective tissue and hepatic side without involvement to the liver. They told this will be the MCQ. If they ask periductal bile duct cancer T staging any MCQ, this will be the MCQ. Hepatic parenchyma is involved. What is the stage? T2B. But perimuscular connective tissue and hepatic side without extension into the liver. What is the stage? It will be T3. These two things alone you remember. That's why I have highlighted. Rest of the things and all you will forget. How much ever you study, you'll forget only these things.
He already invaded the liver T2B. But you're telling NCCN?
Sir, sir, NCCN Anko class la sonnanga na ange yosichen enna the hepatic parenchyma is involved, but the perimuscular connective tissue on the hepatic side with no extension into the liver on the T3 nu sonnanga.
Okay.
Okay, I'll clarify once with the NCCN guidelines. Okay.
I will put a picture.
So in proximal cholangiocarcinoma, they are telling about the types. So the type So Bismuth-Collatz classification is there. Okay, that is in page 55.61 diagram is there. You see that diagram 151.5. I know everyone knows this Bismuth-Collatz classification for this proximal cholangiocarcinoma. Among these things, they are telling the type 1 and 2 are treated with the CBD resection, cholecystectomy, and 5 to 10 millimeter margin of resection. Type 2 lesions will require partial hepatic resection, which commonly includes the resection of the caudate lobe. Okay, so type 2 it requires hepatic resection, which commonly involves the resection of the caudate lobe. So resection of the bile duct and nodal tissue requires skeletalization of the hepatic artery, and that's no need. Next, come to this side. With resection to the secondary biliary radicals, trans-anastomotic stenting is usually used liberally to allow healing and even confirmation of the anastomotic intake. So second order biliary radical, if during anastomosis we can put a stent, trans-anastomotic stent should be placed. Then negative margin status is the most important variable outcome associated with that. That's what I told. Two important factors in cholangiocarcinoma. One is the negative margin status, and one more important thing is this nodal involvement. Okay. Next, staging for the distal bile duct cancer. This is the easiest staging. 1, 2, 3, 4, less than 5 millimeter depth, 5 to 12 millimeter depth, more than 12 millimeter depth. Then T4 is the major vessel involvement. Here you have regional nodes N1, N2. That's why I told in only in intrahepatic bile duct cancer there is no N2. Okay. See, only N1 is there in intrahepatic bile duct cancer. Whereas in other two things, perihilar and distal bile duct cancer, there is N2. Okay. Next, come to the last paragraph, last 3 lines. So lymph nodes are one of the most important prognostic factor in cholangiocarcinoma and may help direct the advanced therapy. Already I told, no. Then so indications for liver transplantation they are telling. So transplant has shown promising results in the tightly controlled trials where hilar cholangiocarcinoma occurs in the setting of an underlying liver disease. So the indications will be unresectable, less than 3 centimeter radial diameter, then no intra or extrahepatic met should be there, then no nodal disease should be there, then there can be with or without primary sclerosing cholangitis. These are some of the criteria for the liver transplantation in this cholangiocarcinoma, hilar cholangiocarcinoma. Then coming to palliation, I read, I didn't get any MCQ, all known points only. If it is proximal, we'll go for PTC. If it is distal, we'll go for the ERCP. That's it. If a duodenal obstruction is there, we'll put stenting. That's it. Then pain, it is there, you give the blockade and all, nerve blockade and all. Same only, nothing different. Then medical treatment, chemotherapy has not shown to improve survival in patients with cholangiocarcinoma. Okay, so radiotherapy is also waste, chemotherapy is also waste. Okay, then only one thing if you want to remember intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, no, even though radiotherapy is waste, they don't use radiotherapy, they might give a statement that intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma are radio resistant. It is not radio resistant, it can work, but it is not useful according to the studies and all. So next, last 2 lines in the outcome. So the principal reason for the variability in survival appears to be the presence of the lymph node. Same thing they are telling. Then come to this side, median survival for unresected patients range from 5 to 8 months only. Okay, so recently some centers have attempted neoadjuvant chemoradiation followed by exploration for the evaluation of the resectability and metastasis, and finally transplantation with improved survival over resection alone. Okay, so next, metastatic and other tumors. Metastatic nodes can compress the CBD at any point along its length. So what are the things? Lymphoma may affect the portal lymph node chain, and when isolated to periportal nodes is notoriously difficult to differentiate from the cholangiocarcinoma. So isolated periportal lymphoma node, it will be difficult to differentiate from the cholangiocarcinoma. So placement of a temporary plastic stent is required in these lymphoma cases, because lymphoma will respond to the chemotherapy and all. Okay. Okay, that's it.
Regarding the strength, na,
Don't have extra points you can tell.
Regarding strength, okay,
Huh?
in that in any palliation case, in regarding stent, I am telling.
Okay.
Biliary drainage. All palliative types, especially in GB cancer and bile cancer, in palliation, they are using only metal stents. Okay. Only for
Okay.
lymphoma, only they are using plastic stent. That is already told.
Yeah, we have to remove. Na. Anyway, it is chemotherapy, chemosensitive. It will respond immediately. It will decrease in. We can remove.
We will get 100% cure from lymphoma. After chemotherapy. So you have to remove. Whenever there is palliative, only you give SIMS, metal stents or something. And that you told us the Mayer's protocol for a transplant in hilar cholangiocarcinoma. Tumor size less than 3 centimeter in the absence of distant metastasis, and the CA99 greater than 100,000 per ml. That and all. Hello? Where are the for transplant? Okay. This T3 is same only. Whatever given book is correct only.
Which one, sir?
T3. This T3 from another hilar cholangiocarcinoma.
What I told.
Not from booklet. It is correct. So T3
correct. And the extra point
illa. NCCL illa. Invades unilateral branches of the portal vein.
Okay. Maybe after that, maybe they would have done mistake in my class.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Next what Yogi? Hello?
Hello.
Hello, Prem.
Hello.
Next class is what? Liver or what?